than NFL Network's very own former Jets general manager, Mike Tannenbaum, and he joins us right now. Mike, it's Zach Gelb here. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Well, we're doing great. It's great to have you on. And although we are in Philadelphia, I'm actually from New York. And over break, over in December, I was listening to the talk radio, whether it was FAN or ESPN, and we heard a lot of things going on where possibly some fans were calling for you to be fired, for Rex to be fired. When it ultimately came down, when Woody Johnson said, you're no longer a part of this organization, were you at all surprised, or did you expect it coming off missing the playoffs 2 years in a row?
Well, you have to understand when you have the privilege of one of these jobs to be the general manager of an NFL team, it comes with the territory. And I had the privilege of being with one organization for 16 years, 7 as a general manager. It was a great run, 2 championship games, and this year we fell short, and Mr. Johnson decided to make a change, and you're never happy about it, but you understand it, and I thanked him. It was a great run, and it was time to move on.
You were known for being a cap guy with Parcells when you came in there with the Jets, and 16 years in any organization is a phenomenal job, especially seeing how many times teams come and go and they cut personnel guys loose. But did you ever expect to be a general manager? Was that always a dream of yours, being a cap guy predominantly?
Absolutely. Going back all the way to my undergraduate days at the University of Massachusetts, always studied how teams were built, and then my break came with the New Orleans Saints, and I started at the bottom, driving people to the airport, and over time I was able to do more things, from player evaluations to negotiate contracts, and just work my way up the ladder.
This Jets team, they went to the AFC Championship game twice in 2 consecutive years. They lost to the Colts, they lost to the Steelers. In the next 2 years, you guys missed the playoffs. What happened from once you left the field in Pittsburgh, losing a game where you dominated the first half, and the second half your team just didn't have enough of an effort to get past the Steelers? What happened from going out there after there until these last 2 years? What changed with this team?
Well, I think, as we all know, being fans of pro football, and probably what makes our sport so special is the margins. And going back to 2011, we were 8-5 and wound up losing our last 3 games, and we were eliminated from the playoffs in the last half of the last game. This past year, we're sitting there 6-7 on Monday Night Football. We're 20 yards away from beating Tennessee and then being tied for the 6th seed. So I think sometimes the difference between winning and losing is very small. I think this year specifically, we had some key injuries with Darrelle Revis and Santonio Holmes, and I certainly could have done a better job with the skill player positions. And with that said, I'm really proud of the run we had these last 2 years. I think we were closer. Lost some overtime games, and when you lose, especially within the division, those games usually count a game and a half.
Do you think there was too much pressure on Mark Sanchez? I understand when you got to those AFC Championship games, Thomas Jones and Sean Green, they did a great job rushing the ball, but do you think too much pressure was put on Mark Sanchez this year?
No. When you're a pro quarterback in the NFL, especially in New York, it comes with the territory. And the thing about Mark that's really interesting is he's played really well in big games. He's beaten Tom Brady. He's beaten Peyton Manning in road playoff games. And to me, that's the watermark that you have to evaluate these quarterbacks. He wasn't consistent enough. He turned the ball over too many times. And like I said, I could have done a better job of getting him better players. So I think we all share in the success, and we all could have done a better job this past year.
When you saw Mark Sanchez on draft day, what stood out to you about the USC product?
Competitive, to make all the throws. Playing football was really important to him. It wasn't about the fame, the adulation. It was about being a very good player for a long period of time.
What does he need to improve on right now? Because you've seen him throw a plethora of interceptions this year. He's fumbled the football as well. What's the one thing Mark Sanchez needs to improve on to try to get the Jets back to the playoffs and even possibly the AFC Championship game?
I think it's just consistency, trying to cut down the turnovers. Mark's so competitive that that sometimes could hurt him a little bit, in terms of trying to make a play. So I think sometimes just realizing, hey, you know what, throwing the ball away here, it's a great play. And sometimes that's counterintuitive to what we think, but, that's maybe an area he can improve upon.
Mike Tannenbaum joins us on the hotline, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. Mike now does a phenomenal job for the NFL Network, former Jets general manager. And the one move to me, Mike, that really just made me scratch my head was bringing in Tim Tebow this year. He never even got a chance to play quarterback, and I know he was brought in as the backup quarterback, tried to enhance that Wildcat kind of system. Westhoff used him a little bit on special teams. But take me through the thought process of going out there and trading for Tim Tebow.
Basically, started the year before with losing Brad Smith, and we felt like when we lost Brad, we lost a lot in terms of the Wildcat offense and making it our offense more dynamic and harder to defend. So, we thought the price of a fourth-round pick was reasonable, his salary was reasonable, and that's why we did it, to add to our offense.
Do you at all think Tim Tebow was a distraction? Some people perceive the Jets this year as a circus. There was a lot of media coverage, and that's what happens when Tim Tebow comes in because of his following and how much he's respected in the NFL as a human being. But do you at all think he was a distraction to this football team?
Well, we certainly knew that he was going to bring, a degree of notoriety, unlike any other player in the league. But we felt like we had the infrastructure to handle it. We've been through some other, noteworthy events, be it Hard Knocks or championship games or Brett Favre. So we felt like we had the institutional infrastructure to handle it. And at the end of the day, you got to win games. And we didn't win enough of them. Tim gave us, an excellent effort. He was a real pro. We tried to integrate him into our offense. It was a move, obviously, that didn't work out.
And to me, if I was Mark Sanchez sitting there and you see a team that brings in a quarterback that got to the playoffs last year, I'd be wondering, well, what's the status of my job? Take me back to that conversation when you trade for Tim Tebow. What was that conversation between you and Mark?
I let him know what was going on. Obviously, Mark had started a lot of games for us at quarterback. We had signed him to an extension. But at the end of the day, we're in a win business, and we felt like Tim could enhance our offense, make us more difficult to defend, make the other team prepare more for us during the week. We felt that was, on the net, a real positive. So we told him that, and, it was the decision we made.
Mike Tannenbaum joins us on the hotline. Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. Zach Gelb here with you for Temple Sports Hour. And, Mike, now the big question with the Jets is what to do with Darrelle Revis. He could walk after next year. If you were still the general manager, would you go out there and trade him, or would you keep Darrelle Revis?
That's really not fair for me to say. There's somebody else occupying that seat. I think Darrell's a really good player. They'll have to figure out what the walk-away price is or, how to trade him. He's obviously a very good player, and, they'll make the best decision with the information they have.
Fair enough, but let's say if you were an opposing general manager, like the San Francisco 49ers or the Seattle Seahawks or even the Atlanta Falcons, some teams that have shown interest. Obviously, he has one more year left on his contract. If you were a GM, would you give up a whole lot knowing that if he doesn't necessarily have that extension in place, or would that be something when you bring in a player at the caliber of Darrelle Revis, you're giving a lot up in return for him? Would you only make that trade if the contract was in place for the long term?
Well, it's hard to answer these questions in the abstract. That all depends on what the compensation is. So, for example, if you're giving up, significant first-day draft choices, obviously you'd want an extension in place. If it's a later-round pick with conditions, then maybe you take them. Certainly did that with Pro Marty when we traded him from San Diego. We put conditions in a trade. So, there's more than one way to approach it, and I'm sure they're, assessing their options, over the coming days and weeks.
Gut feeling, because we see another cornerback here in Philadelphia, Nnamdi Asomugha, who was a stud with the Raiders, and he just really hasn't panned out here in Philadelphia, and he's been getting a whole lot of money. They're trying to make him restructure that deal, but the general feel that I get from the Eagles organization is if he doesn't restructure, he's either going to be cut or traded. When you're an opposing general manager, just like similar to Darrelle Revis, but this is a little bit different because this guy could possibly get cut. Darrelle Revis isn't going to go out there and get cut. Does that at all factor into your decision? Do you have that in your back mind where possibly you see Nnamdi Asomugha, you know that he could get cut, so maybe you don't even go that trade route and just hope that he gets cut, and then maybe you go out there and get him for free?
Well, absolutely. That's one of your jobs as a general manager is to assess your options for, ways to help your team. So be a corner or whatever else, who's a cap casualty, what's the trade market look like, what does the draft look like, and it's a big continuum. So that certainly could be a factor. But you got to look at the tape, how they play. You got to look at their age, and historically what that age at that position, looks like. So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
And the Eagles, they just say goodbye to their head coach, Andy Reid. They bring in Chip Kelly coming in from college. Give me the breakdown of Chip Kelly. Do you like his fit here in Philadelphia?
I do. Here's a guy that's always been successful going back to New Hampshire. So, that's hard to do. He's a heck of a coach. He's innovative. He's creative. I thought, the job that Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman did was phenomenal in a very competitive situation. Not only are they competing against the other NFL teams, but obviously they're competing against, his emotion and his loyalty to Oregon, and the fact that they could get that done, I think, speaks a lot to them. And more importantly, that they truly have a great story to tell in terms of, what they were offering, in Philadelphia and long term. Because obviously, if Chip didn't think there was a chance for, sustainability, the easy decision would have been for him to stay in Oregon.
This is a quarterback league, no doubt about it, and you need a good quarterback to win in this league. You've seen that numerous times throughout the course of the season. They have Michael Vick. They just brought him back. Many people actually thought that he wasn't going to return, but he does. And then Nick Foles as well. When you break down Michael Vick and Nick Foles, what do you see?
Well, with Michael Vick, he's a player that's, obviously very dynamic, and he's, anytime we played him, we were scared to death of him because he can hurt you in so many different ways. Obviously the turnovers and the durability are the two questions you'd have, but I thought it was a really good sign to go into the offseason with him and Foles. I think you're dealing from a position of strength, and you add Dennis Dixon, who knows the system very well. Foles has, upside, and the thing that I like about those two players, specifically in Foles and Vick, is they complement one another, so it makes the defense prepare for a couple different aspects of it, the way Vick can attack you both, throwing and running. And obviously, Foles is a more traditional, bigger pocket passer. And now you go into the draft, and if there's another guy, in the second and third round, like they did with Foles a year ago, you could add another guy. So I think you're really operating from a position of strength. I thought the timing of the Vick signing was really smart because now you can attack a lot of other needs, knowing that you have 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks that you like.
Mike Tannenbaum joins us. Mike, a few more questions right before we let you go. I know you just wrapped up in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. You've been a GM for the last several years. Take me through that Combine process when you're interviewing these kinds of athletes, seeing if they're good enough for your team.
Right. Most important part of the Combine by far is the interviews. You want to get them in a situation where they're out of their comfort zone, they're away from their agents, they're not prepped. Well, they are prepped, but you try to get them off what they were prepped to be asked. And you just really want to find out who they are. And, pro football is, fantastic. It's a great journey, but there's also bumps in the road. And for us, we always wanted to know what it was like to, get inside them and figure out that, hey, when you have the bad day, when you give up a touchdown pass, when you throw an interception, what are you going to be like at the following Wednesday's practice? And, the good teams, the good players, they're resilient. And, that was one of the keys for us every time we went to Indy.
The most intriguing part to me about this whole NFL draft and the player in it is Manti Te'o because of the whole backstory with the whole fake girlfriend and all that stuff. And no one would have even thought that this story was fake, and it turned out to be. If you were able to sit down with Manti Te'o, how would you handle that process? Would what happened off the field at all affect you drafting him if you were there, sitting there, and you needed a linebacker?
Well, I think you want to get to know him, and more importantly, get to know the people around him. He's been a good player for a long time. He's going to be a really good player in the NFL. I don't think any question about that. At the end of the day, if he goes 25 or 45, 10 years from now, it doesn't really matter. He's going to be a good football player. He has 4 years of tape. Obviously, that situation is unique, but, social media is part of our society today. You want to find out, hey, what happened? Is it aberrational? But, by all accounts, he's an excellent person, a great teammate. They won a lot of games. They played for a national championship. Why wouldn't you want that guy on your team?
When I look at the NFL draft, here's the one thing that I can't stand about the Combine is that a guy could go out there, play 3 to 4 good years of football, run one bad 40 time, and then all of a sudden you see him going out of the first round. How much of an importance, when you were a general manager, did you place on those 40 times, those bench presses, those cone drills, and et cetera?
Yeah, it's certainly, you want to look at it. It's interesting, it's relevant, but you're not making a decision based on what they do for, a half an hour workout in Indianapolis when you have years of tape. So, the physicals are important. The interviews are important. The on-field workout obviously is part of it, but you have to keep it in its proper context.
Well, Mike, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on today, and let's talk to you again real soon. We appreciate it, my friend.
Okay, thank you.